So let's talk about the history of the Green. You know, from the start, and then here, you know, you played in some of the biggest venues, Waikiki, Shell, a lot of places outside of Hawaii. What was the inception of it? So you had Caleb and JP, they were cousins, right? And then you two were in the band. You guys came together. Brad came, and then Jordan came a year after.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, what was the conversations like? Like, hey, you guys want to join a band?
Yeah. So it's funny because like kind of what me and Zion were talking about earlier, like with our friends from Kamehameha that we started was in like our first bands and stuff like that, was actually how I met JP. And so JP had reached out to one of them because their band, Caleb and JP's band, their like family band, Next Generation, needed a keyboardist. And at that time I was playing keyboards in Stir Crazy. And so I ended up playing keyboards in Next Generation. And then even Zion ended up playing guitar in Next Generation. Brad ended up playing bass in Next Generation.
Oh,
so you can see like this, you know, band sort of coming together, but this is how we started working with each other in this formation. And over time, like the Green still didn't form yet, but over time, you know, some of us we would do various, like we would back musicians that would come here from international, from like Jamaica or other places. And it was usually some formation of like me and Brad or me and Zion, you know, even JP sometimes. And so it was like, and then as Zion mentioned, when our bands like Next Generation, Stir Crazy, Brad was doing his own thing, like when those things kind of started fizzling out, we continued to work on original music, or started working on more original music.
Yeah.
And that essentially, between like JP, Caleb, Zion, myself, became what was the Green's first album. And Brad, became the Green's first album.
And Leslie, yeah.
And so Leslie Ludiazo, who is he's like a member of the Green. We consider him, like, he plays drums for J Boog. He's also the drummer for Hot Rain Band, which is J Boog's band, and legendary drummer, producer. And he's always been with us every step of the way. And so he's
guy.
very much a part of the band. If we're ever at the same festival, or if he's at our show, our prayer, our huddle before every show that we do, our prayer. And Leslie will always come in, and like he always takes the reins of that, because that was his role before he started. He was actually the drummer before Jordan was the drummer. And but anyway, so that music that we worked on pre the Green became, we just decided, like, we're gonna come together and we're gonna release this music. And I think Zion at the time was on the road in the mainland playing guitar for like Mystic Roots band, they're still around touring today, and Pato Bantan, you know, the legendary Pato Bantan. And like, you know, I remember talking to Zion, and he was on tour, and we, you know, that was like a glorious thing, right? At that time, we hadn't gone anywhere near the States, like playing music. And I remember just asking Zion, like, what's it like? What are you guys doing? And it sounded like he was just raging and partying, which is probably like what it was. Because I think that's everyone's first, like, you kind of think like, oh yeah, you're going to go on the road and you're just going to party and get wasted. And, you know, it's like, honestly, like, I think that is a part of it to some extent when you first go out there.
Yeah, especially when you're young. Yeah,
especially when you're young. But you can never sustain that. You know what I mean? And like, but Zion, like, as we would talk about this project we had back home that we are calling the Green,
I would just keep calling them. Yeah. I'd be and to check in and tell them what's going on. I'd be like, bro, Kikes, we're in Florida. I'm singing whatever one of the songs, and they were like kind of tripping out. Yeah. And then I'd be talking to him about the Green stuff and JP too, and they'd be like, we're doing it, bro. We're doing it. And I'm like, bro, I'm gonna come home, bro. Yeah. These guys are cool, but I've been waiting for, like, I want to do this with the Boyz. I want to do what I'm doing out here with, you know. Wow. And Kikes them were just doing it.
Caleb was at like a point where he could have easily just went solo on his own, and he didn't want to. He wanted to he wanted to stick with the Boyz too, you know, and he wanted to be in a band and not be solo, and like
have JP there, and have us there, and you know, Kimo, JP's brother, who's also Caleb's cousin, who was our manager for a long time. He was around too, so he toured with us a lot. So yeah, it was just like we had each other around, you know, like
that's so cool. That's like a total Photo Boyz moment.
Yeah, and so he comes home, and that kind of like locks in the deal, and now we have like, you know, we put out like the four of us was like the album cover had a picture of like the four of us, me, Zion, JP, and Kayla, but it was, you know, in the background it was still Brad and Leslie, and we had a lot of people. It was Capena de Lima.
Wow.
And Lucas Hom was on keyboards. He plays.
Lucas Hom. He's another official member who's not really with us, but is like on stage, but is still there.
Okay. So how did you guys come up with the name? Who was the inventor of the green?
I remember we had a show in Kona, and it was one of our very first shows. I believe it was opening for Catch a Fire, and this is actually before like Zion came home, and we were trying to. The promoter needed a name for what they were gonna call us. Like they asked us to play.
Oh, you even have a
without
name
even knowing.
This is for the poster.
This band was, and
who gets to open for Catch a Fire? Who is this?
So yeah, so no, I remember like being on the phone with JP, and he was just like, if you guys know JP, he was just like on the phone going like, oh, what about this name? What about this name? What about this name? And I'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of cool, and like. Be like, hang up and be like, wait, what about this name? What about this name? You know? And then I remember he said the green, and that was like like a light bulb went off, and it was like, that sounds sick, because it's like, it's kind of like whatever you want it to be kind of thing. And it's nothing really specific, but we know that like a lot of people can either like relate to it somehow, you know, but it purely sounded good.
Yeah.
You know, green. And so we sent that to the promoter, and then it was the green.
Does it have anything to do with anything herbal or medicinal?
Yep.
Yes.
Good for you, organic. So mamaki
all of
tea.
it.
That's my
Mamaki
favorite
tea.
one.
Mamaki tea. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And the peppermint, mint one is my favorite one. The pineapple.
Okay, we're on the same page, right?
Yeah.